Can you believe it? Right in the heart of Europe, there are places where nearly half the population is living below the poverty line. Welcome to the dark side of France in 2026. This is not the France you see on postcards. Not the cafes, not the romance, not the glowing lights. This is a different reality, hidden behind carefully curated images of perfection. In cities like Paris, money flows endlessly, opportunities multiply, and global talent gathers. But beyond that shining center, another France is quietly collapsing, far from the spotlight and attention. What you are witnessing is not a temporary crisis. It is a structural shift. France is splitting into two completely different worlds, moving in opposite directions at the same time. On one side, powerful megacities are accelerating into the future. Innovation, finance, and technology concentrate wealth, creating islands of prosperity that seem untouchable from the outside. On the other side, entire regions are fading away. Former industrial towns and rural communities are losing jobs, people, and purpose, becoming shadows of what they once were. The numbers are not just alarming, they are shocking. In multiple cities, poverty rates have climbed beyond 25%, even reaching close to 45% in the worst hit areas. This means nearly half the population in some places is struggling to survive. Not thrive, not grow, just survive, in a country considered one of the richest in the world. And the crisis deepens when you look at the younger generation. Youth unemployment is spiraling between 20% and 35%, creating a lost generation with no clear future ahead. These are not just statistics. These are millions of lives slowly being pushed out of opportunity, forced to either leave or accept a reality of stagnation and uncertainty. Population decline tells an even darker story. Former industrial hubs are shrinking year after year as people pack their bags and move toward cities that still offer hope. When people leave, they don't just take their belongings. They take skills, energy, ambition, and the very future of the places they abandoned behind them forever. What remains is a hollow shell. Empty streets, closed shops, abandoned homes, and a silence that grows louder with every passing year in these forgotten cities. This is not decline in the traditional sense. This is not a slow economic cycle. This is something far more dangerous, far more permanent. This is abandonment, a silent decision shaped by policies and priorities, where entire regions are left behind in the pursuit of concentrated growth elsewhere. And the consequences are visible everywhere. Public services shrink, healthcare becomes harder to access, schools lose students, and local economies suffocate without investment. The divide is no longer subtle. It is visible, measurable, and accelerating. A country once unified in identity now feels increasingly fragmented along economic and geographic lines. What you're about to see is not an isolated problem. It is a pattern repeating itself across multiple cities, each one telling a different version of the same story. 10 cities, 10 warning signs. One national crisis unfolding in real time, hidden beneath the surface of a country still seen as stable and prosperous. Stay with this journey, because what lies ahead will challenge everything you thought you knew about modern France and the true cost of uneven development. The collapse did not begin overnight. It started slowly when factories closed, machines stopped, and the economic engines that once powered entire cities suddenly fell silent without warning. In Saint-Étienne, the story is painfully clear. Once a proud industrial powerhouse, now struggles with shrinking population, rising poverty, and a generation losing faith in the future. Over decades, thousands have left the city behind. Empty apartments line the streets, abandoned buildings dominate the skyline, and the once bustling center now feels eerily quiet and forgotten. Authorities have tried to revive it through investment projects, but rebuilding infrastructure cannot restore lost purpose. Without jobs and opportunity, even the most ambitious plans struggle to make a difference. Move north to Roubaix, and the picture becomes even darker. Once a global textile capital, it now faces one of the highest poverty concentrations in the country. Nearly half the population struggles daily. Child poverty is widespread, creating a generation raised in hardship, with limited access to education, stability, and long-term opportunities for upward mobility. The collapse of the textile industry did more than remove jobs. It fractured communities, deepened inequality, and left behind neighborhoods that feel disconnected from the rest of the nation. Further east, Mulhouse tells a different but equally troubling story. Industry disappeared, but instead of complete collapse, the city transformed into something else entirely. Today, Mulhouse survives by depending on nearby wealth. Many residents commute daily to Switzerland, earning abroad while their own city remains economically fragile and inactive during working hours. It has become what some describe as a sleeping city, active at night, but quiet during the day, lacking the internal economic strength needed to sustain independent growth. Then there is Thionville, once a proud steel capital. When steel production declined, the city lost not just jobs, but its identity and long-term direction. Now, much of its workforce depends on neighboring Luxembourg. Each morning people leave to earn a living elsewhere, returning only to sleep in a city that no longer supports itself. This creates a fragile system. Money is earned outside, often spent outside, and local businesses struggle to survive without a strong, self-sustaining economic cycle within the city. These cities may look different on the surface, but the pattern is identical. Industrial collapse leads to job loss, which triggers migration, eventually leaving behind weakened, declining urban environments. When opportunity disappears, people follow it, and when people leave, everything else begins to fade, from small businesses to public services and the social fabric itself. This is the real chain reaction shaping modern France. Not sudden destruction, but a slow erosion that quietly transforms thriving cities into places struggling to justify their own existence. When factories die, cities follow. This is not just a phrase. It is a reality unfolding across multiple regions, repeating itself with devastating consistency and long-term consequences. And what remains is not just economic damage. It is a loss of identity, pride, and purpose, leaving behind cities searching for meaning in a world that has moved on without them. The crisis here is quieter. No explosions, no sudden collapse. Just a slow, almost invisible fading, where entire cities begin to disappear without anyone outside noticing the change happening. In Béziers, the surface still looks alive. Tourists walk through sunny streets, but beneath that image lies an economy struggling to breathe and grow. Unemployment remains stubbornly high, especially among young people. Many feel trapped, unable to escape cycles of low income, limited opportunity, and a future that feels increasingly out of reach. Growth has stalled almost completely. Businesses hesitate to invest, and without new industries, the city drifts slowly, relying on seasonal tourism that cannot sustain long-term economic stability. Then comes Calais, a place shaped by geography and damaged by global politics. The shock of Brexit changed everything here almost overnight. Trade flows weakened, logistics slowed, and an economy built around movement suddenly found itself stuck. The port, once a lifeline, no longer delivers the same prosperity it once promised. At the same time, the migration crisis placed enormous pressure on the city. Infrastructure, public services, and social stability were pushed beyond their limits, leaving long-lasting scars across the region. Calais became a symbol of dependency gone wrong. When a city relies too heavily on one function, any disruption can trigger a chain reaction that affects every layer of daily life. Further south, Perpignan offers a different kind of illusion: beautiful landscapes, warm climate, and a lifestyle that seems ideal from the outside looking in. But behind the postcard image lies a fragile economy. Many young and educated residents leave for Spain or larger French cities, searching for better opportunities and stronger financial futures. This constant outflow creates a deep imbalance. The city becomes older, less dynamic, and increasingly dependent on tourism, which brings visitors but not long-term stability for local communities. The contrast is striking. Luxury resorts and scenic views exist side by side with struggling neighborhoods, where income levels remain low and opportunities continue to shrink year after year. Then there is Nevers, where the crisis feels even more silent. Isolation defines this city, cut off from major infrastructure and high-speed economic networks. Without strong transport links, investment rarely arrives. Businesses avoid the area, and young people see no reason to stay, leaving behind a population that grows older each year. Healthcare is slowly disappearing. Doctors leave, hospitals reduce services, and basic access becomes a challenge, turning daily life into a quiet struggle for those who remain. What makes these cities different is not just their problems, but how those problems unfold. There is no dramatic collapse, no headline moment that captures global attention. Instead, there is silence. Streets become emptier, opportunities fade, and entire communities slowly shrink without resistance, as if the world has quietly moved on without them. These cities are not collapsing loudly. They are slowly disappearing, piece by piece, year after year, until what remains barely resembles the vibrant places they once were. And that silence is the most dangerous signal of all. Because when decline becomes quiet, it becomes easier to ignore and much harder to reverse once it goes too far. Now we arrive at the final stage of this journey. Not just decay, but a deeper question. What happens when a city loses its purpose and no longer knows how to survive? In Limoges, tradition once meant strength. Famous for its ceramics, it built a global identity that carried the city through generations of economic stability. But tradition alone is no longer enough. Global competition, especially from cheaper international production, has eroded this foundation, leaving local industries struggling to compete in a rapidly shifting market. Workshops are closing, production is shrinking, and the skilled workforce that once defined Limoges is slowly disappearing, either retiring or moving elsewhere in search of better opportunities. This creates a dangerous vacuum. Without innovation or new industries, the city risks becoming trapped in its past, unable to adapt to the demands of a modern, globalized economy. Then there is Bourges, where the crisis takes a different form. A city once driven by military and industrial relevance now faces an uncertain and stagnant future. As defense demands shift and technology evolves, Bourges has lost much of its strategic importance. What remains is an economy struggling to redefine itself in a world that has moved forward. Growth here is minimal, almost stagnant. Businesses hesitate, investment slows, and younger generations see fewer reasons to build their future in a place with limited upward mobility. This leads to a deeper issue. A city without a clear role risks becoming a place people pass through, rather than a destination where they choose to stay and invest their lives. When identity fades, everything else follows. Cultural life weakens, economic energy declines, and the sense of belonging that once held communities together begins to disappear quietly over time. Looking at the bigger picture, a clear pattern emerges. France is no longer moving forward as a single, unified economic system with equal opportunities across all regions. Instead, it is dividing. On one side, powerful hubs like Paris, Lyon, and Toulouse continue to attract wealth, innovation, and global attention. On the other side, entire territories are being left behind. Smaller cities, once essential to national growth, are now struggling to maintain relevance in an increasingly centralized system. This imbalance is not accidental. It reflects deeper structural issues, including the overconcentration of wealth and opportunity in a few dominant urban centers across the country. At the same time, there has been a failure to replace old industries with new economic engines, leaving many regions dependent on outdated or fragile sources of income. Dependence creates vulnerability. Whether it is relying on tourism, neighboring economies, or a single sector, these cities lack the resilience needed to withstand modern economic shocks. And perhaps the most critical factor of all is youth migration. When young people leave, they take innovation, energy, and the possibility of renewal with them. Without that generation, recovery becomes almost impossible. What remains is a cycle of decline, where aging populations struggle to sustain systems designed for growth and expansion. So now the question turns to you. Would you stay in a place where opportunities are fading, or would you leave in search of a better future elsewhere? And beyond that, a larger question emerges. Is this the future of Europe itself, where prosperity becomes concentrated, while entire regions slowly fade into economic silence? Because these are not just isolated cases. These are signals, warnings that show what happens when growth is uneven and entire communities are left behind in the process. These are not just cities. They are previews of a future where imbalance becomes the norm and recovery becomes harder with every passing year of neglect. If this perspective made you think, share your opinion below. Would you stay and fight for these cities, or leave before the decline reaches its final stage? If you found this analysis valuable, like this video and share it with others. These stories deserve attention, and awareness is the first step toward meaningful discussion and change. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more deep analysis. In the next video, we will uncover even darker realities hidden inside other powerful countries around the world.